There really aren't any good models of the two locomotives present at the wedding of the rails. The Bachmans are recolorings of a Baldwin 826C. The LGB ones are stunning replicas of, well, replicas. The Uniteds are junky retools of their Reno model. The PSCs get way too much wrong and leave out too much for their price point. And the Lionels are the only ones with accurate paint schemes. But they're made by Lionel. However, as wonky as they may be, there's one final vestige of hope in the catalog of an obscure brass manufacturer, and that's Balboa. While these models have some surface level inaccuracies and are missing some details, it doesn't take much money or resources to create a stunningly accurate Jupiter. Notice how I left 119 out? While the main sin of the Jupiter is the absence of details in the elongated check valve, the 119 suffers a little worse in the proportions department. And by a little I mean, holy crap, somebody give this thing a haircut. When I say grossly oversized, I want to put extra emphasis on the gross. Stack is halfway past the thermosphere, and the dome is a life-size representation of and that's 1:1 scale, not 1/87th. I proved I could work my way around my brass Jupiter, so what was so different about the 119? Well, just that. How on earth was I gonna fix that? The answer may shock you, and the results from said answer more so. That being said, let's get down into the details of this enormous undertaking. So that mess I was just quibbling about was exactly the thing that stopped me from taking on this project for the better part of a year after I received the model initially. Well, that and the fact that the previous owner just kinda went ahead and dropped it. Seriously, why can I seldom find one of these models that hasn't been dropped? The Jupiters are all fine, but so many of the 119s have clearly eaten dirt. Don't believe me? Set an eBay save search and just wait. Anyway, I straightened out the cap damage on some random day I was particularly bored, but the pilot was a mess. I didn't have much of a choice but to completely replace it. Luckily, CalScale has made all the parts for these locomotives readily available. After I accidentally ordered an extra Jupiter one, I got the proper 119 pilot. Of course, without the flag mounting poles. So, I violently melted off the old pilot, then violently melted the new pilot on. Here's a fun little detail you probably missed on the model. There's this little stanchion depicted on the pilot on John Ott's rendering, so I added it on mine too. With the pilot back in place, it's time to move on to those nasty castings. The only plausible solution I could muster up was to quite literally cut the excess out. I ground it out with a cutting wheel on my Dremel, then secured it through 3 different adhesives. Epoxy putty to get it level, epoxy to fill the gaps, and CA to create an easily sandable outside shell. So that's exactly what I did on both of the offending parts. I've created some 3D printable details to round out what was missing, including plumbing, cylinder cocks, valve gear, and whatever those little nodules on the front of the valve housings are for. I also brought her up to snuff with a few brass wire details, including the funky sanding cock lever, the injector lever. I can't say this. I can't say lever more than a few times. The funky sanding cock lever, the injector lever, the absolutely crackpot cylinder cock lever that's attached to the handrail, and this lever, I believe, operates a steam-powered ash cleanout, which was a fad around the time the prototype was constructed. There are a few tiny things I left out, but I'm satisfied with this level of detail. The model depicts the inside of the coal bunker walls, and I had to remove this to fit DCC. While I did this with a Dremel on the Jupiter, I figure I'd use my fancy new torch to get a cleaner edge on the 119. I melted the tender into many warped pieces. I patched it up as best as I could, but you can still tell where the tank isn't fully level on the final model. It is what it is. Next step after getting the model ready was soaking in vinegar for painting. No chipping on the 119 like I had on the Jupiter. A 3-hour soak did her very good. Next step was to prime and install rivet decals. They end up coming out like garbage, but don't sweat it, this paint job will not last. I did my usual Russia iron with Vallejo metal color, wooden cab with oil paint, and picked out the frame meticulously and lined the pilot along with a vibrant Vallejo vermilion for the wheels. Spiffy. When it came time to do the smoke box, I decided on a wash like I did with my Jupiter. However, unlike with Jupiter, all was not well. You see, I think I accidentally left my pot of Tamiya flat black out overnight at some point because it had gone gooey. While I wasn't intimidated by that at first, it did come back to bite me. The paint unsatisfyingly coagulated in certain areas and completely refused to coat others. It was a mess. I had no choice but to strip half of the shell. And once again, all was not well. The acetone obviously crept further up the shell, and I could deny it no longer. I stripped the whole thing and started over. As mentioned earlier, the rivet decals didn't turn out nice on the firebox course, so I admitted them there and would use a different approach to get them looking nice on the stack. Otherwise, I painted the model the exact same way, but this time I darkened the burnt iron paint to get a nice lamp black smoke box. I really like how it turned out. Next, on to decals. Of course, they had to be homemade, and I used a combination of John Ott and Trainboy One's art to make homemade decals. My favorite touch is the Hudson River School paintings the 19th century server on Discord helped me to decipher. I noticed there's a rainbow on the fireman's side painting, and that fills me with joy and whimsy unbound. I found close as possible matches and fit them accordingly to the known images. The whole process of installation was a nightmare as per usual with homemade decals. Blah blah blah, chipping, cracking, white spots, you get the drill. I finished up the hand lining as well here too. Once that was done, I mounted the speaker, filled in the coal load, and hit it with aqua gloss, and she was looking sharp. Until the speaker burned out. That was quickly replaced, and that leads us to my cleanest model yet. And if I may be a bit brash, probably the most accurate model of this locomotive out there. And there you have it, the wetting of the rails with the locomotives looking just like they crawled out of 1869. Thanks for joining me on another modeling adventure. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, or you want to glaze my work, let me know in the comments below. I have the Westwood kits for the cars, and I do have long-term plans for a diorama as well. Project Promontory isn't over just yet. That being said, see you in the next video.